I don't think the Bad Batch show knows what it is. I want to start by saying that I know a lot of people like this show and the direction that it went. That's great. I want everyone to like a Star Wars show, myself included. But unfortunately, too many things missed the mark for me to reflect on it with a positive light. Crosshair said something in that final episode that put it really well. How they haven't been the same squad since Tech died. I think the first major issue the Bad Batch faced was how their squad was just never together. It started early on, with Crosshair leaving the group because of, chip reasons. Fine, nothing wrong with that. You can't say you didn't miss having the sharpshooter around on the squad. You carry on the show for a long time, one member short, but you get used to it. Then Echo was gone, doing more interesting things off screen with Rex for a lot of the show, and again we were down a member. Then when we get Echo back, we lose Tech, and it's like, sheesh. Half the excitement of this show was watching how the batch of unique clones handled difficult situations together, but we spent so much of the show with only 3 members of the squad. Hell, most of the time in this last season it's just Wrecker and Hunter, until we finally got Crosshair back. Oh, but when we do get him back, he's not a sharpshooter anymore. So, he's not really back, is he? Don't get me wrong, I thought his experimentation trauma was really interesting, and a neat challenge for Crosshair to conquer. But I feel like that should have just been like a 1-episode thing before he resolved it, not like the rest of the season. I was happy to have him back though. His arc was one of the best things about the show. Before I move into what I think is the main problem of the show, I wanted to talk about Echo's involvement in it. I don't know why he was so underutilized. Why did he have to be off-screen doing missions so often? For most of the show, and I'm talking about the show kind of as a whole, it sounded like he was the main character doing actual clone rescue work with Rex. Why couldn't that have been more of this show instead of the filler and useless one-off episodes that do nothing to move the story forward? For example, in this latest season, the episode with Asajj Ventress didn't do anything for the story except have her tell them what an M count meant. Literally could have been anybody and done over comms. But they use all this episode time to have her test Omega, which ultimately leads to nothing. Was the fan service really worth the time spent in that episode? Back to Echo and Rex. Can someone tell me why Rex just couldn't have been in the show in its entirety? You say, well, he's not a member of the Bad Batch. He's not a member of the squad. Well, I hate to break it to you, but this squad hasn't existed since season 1. Any kind of clone order has been thrown out the window since Order 66. So I just don't think that really matters anymore. Especially since the Bad Batch doesn't even really play by the rules of what the Bad Batch is, but we'll get to that later. It would have been nice to have Rex around as a well-known, beloved character who excels as a leader and making difficult decisions. Instead of Hunter, who is a decent leader, but he takes a very passive leading role, often silent, making decisions based off of his emotions, even if they are dumb. This leads me to the main problem. The show doesn't understand itself. It misses the point completely. We've already talked about the problem of the Bad Batch squad never actually really being together since season 1, which I think we can all admit was the most hype the show ever was. At the start of that show, there was so much buzz. Everyone was excited for Bad Batch Fridays. The main draw to the show, which I have talked about before, was the unique elements each clone brought to the table as a squad, which was highlighted to perfection in their introduction in the Clone Wars. I actually think that's where they peaked, if I'm being honest. By season 2, Wrecker was nerfed into oblivion. Tech was essentially rendered pointless with the addition of Echo, who could do anything Tech could do, with some exceptions. Crosshair was gone, and when he returned, he couldn't snipe anymore, and Hunter didn't really use his skills at all. My favorite episode of this last season was when Hunter and Wrecker work with Fennec to hunt down that one lizard boy. It was a great episode because we got to see Hunter using his instincts, his hunting, and his tracking skills again. Wrecker gets a lot of moments where he gets to shine using his hulking strength. There were a lot of tense moments, and I thought that while it was a bit of a milk run episode, I didn't really care. I was enjoying it because the characters were doing what I came to see them do, be the Bad Batch. If I wanted to see a show about regular clones going on missions, I would watch the Clone Wars. But this is the Bad Batch. They should be doing stuff like this every single episode. When I look back on the show, all I see is that missed potential. Then lastly, a point I talked about in my last Bad Batch video, so I won't harp on it for too long, but it's still very relevant in this final season. The Bad Batch kind of just became the Omega show. And I like Omega, I do. but I came for the Bad Batch. Omega wasn't in the Clone Wars setup. In Season 1, we all hypothesized what her unique skill was going to be. Unfortunately, there just wasn't one, but we all still expected that to be the case, because we were watching the Bad Batch. And this is my point. The show doesn't understand itself. If the Bad Batch squad were characters added to another show, I wouldn't have a problem. If the show was called like Omega and Friends or something, wouldn't have a problem. But it was all set up and advertised as a show all around the Bad Batch and their adventures. Before I end the video, I wanted to talk about the last episode. Now, I didn't hate the ending. I thought it was, a happy ending, and that was good. I can't help but feel a little underwhelmed by it, but it was fine. I'm glad the show finally got around to being about clones again in this season and spent more time focusing on rescuing those clones held in captivity. But I can't help but feel that rescuing Omega was the huge underlying motivation to do so. Part of me thinks that if Omega hadn't been captured, they'd still be running errands for Sid and just chilling on Paradise Island. But even in this show's freaking finale, the Bad Batch didn't do much. It was mostly Echo, who did all the legwork because he was able to stick his arm into walls. Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair almost immediately get captured. And another thing, which admittedly is probably my own problem and not the show's fault, I really dislike when they're trying to break someone out of a prison, but the captive is also trying to break themselves out at the same time. It's just really stressful to watch. Like, are they gonna be there at the same time and miss each other? At least the first time Omega broke herself out. The Bad Batch didn't even rescue her. They were just chasing their own tails the whole time. It was satisfying to see her and Crosshair successfully escape. But then she lets herself get recaptured, and I almost threw my remote against the TV. Really, this was the best plan. This was the solution. Just frustrating. It felt like the show was intentionally wasting my time. Like, seriously, we're going to recycle this plot point? Now again, Omega is trying to break out and the Bad Batch are trying to rescue her. It did work out in the end, largely to luck, but I don't want to break down this episode any further. The finale, while written pretty well, couldn't help but frustrate me. When I think back to when they had their full squad just wrecking shit on their way to the objective and them just getting beat up and captured, needing to be rescued by Omega, I don't know, just rubbed me the wrong way, I guess. In conclusion, the show, I think, lost itself along the way. It started really great and then just lost steam. Season 2 was really hard to watch, and it took me a long time to get around to watching Season 3. I wasn't really excited about it at all. I think the writers must have gotten so stuck on certain plot or subplot points that they forgot about the reason that we came to see this show. Now I understand that all of this is my opinion, and everyone has different experiences, but I left the show feeling underwhelmed and ultimately disappointed. Again, if it were renamed or promoted as something else and took the focus off of the Bad Batch a little bit, it wouldn't have been as glaringly obvious to me, and I probably wouldn't be making this video right now. But anyways, that's it. Let me know what your opinions were on the Bad Batch show and what your thoughts were in the comments below or in the Discord. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.